The group is following Fuson as he leads them through a very quiet part of the city. After rounding a few corners, they begin seeing people converging in the same direction. These people are wearing much finer clothes and are using magic to haul supplies with them or are carrying something. The group merges into the train of people, the closest of which give them some nasty glares. After a few minutes, they reach a large star-shaped room with an elf on a center platform, holding a tall staff that's about 3 times his height. The staff is shooting beams towards where the portals are, of which there are 3 open, but the room looks like it could hold more. There are 2 attendants per portal on the flanking positions of each one, assisting in keeping it open, although they do not appear to be straining themselves and are quite relaxed. The portal themselves reveal a hazy view of the place on the other side. Fuson and Ciora, knowing which portal they need to go to, lead the other 2 to it. Stepping through the portal's film-like texture feels as though breaking the surface of water that doesn't ebb or flow. As their perception goes through the boundary, they immediately feel the change in the air. It's also cold, but much more humid. The sun is lower in the sky as it appears to be morning out, and the cloud coverage appears to be very dense. The city around them smells heavy of pine and wood, with all of the buildings being made of a finely carved wood, with dark brown and red roofs. The streets are paved with a black stone, as the entire city sits on a mountain. Turning around, you can see an enormous castle carved into the black stone of the highest peak. The sun is much lower in the sky, indicating that it is morning. The crowds are mainly comprised of humans, most of which are armored and carrying weapons in formation. Well, this is Hocht, and it's actually an island, Fuson beams to the group. And why are they attacking Creedom? Aultemus asks. Well, Creedom and Hocht used to be the same nation at some point, and then Creedom forced a group to where Hocht is now and destroyed the bridge between the island and the continent. This happened hundreds of years ago, but Hocht started this most recent bout of violence. The group manages to pass through the city unaccosted, and once they make it to the main gate, one of the guards yells over to them, "We advise not staying in Creedom for more than a week." Fuson waves a wing and nods. "Heard, officer." As they descend down the mountain, the streets become dilapidated and the cobblestone less smooth and riddled with puddles. The hillside farms filled with battalions of soldiers, all training or resting outside in the unoccupied fields. One of the captains catches the group walking down the road and hails them down as he runs up to the road. "Excuse me, where are you 4 going?" the officer asks. He pauses to look at Aultemus. "Sir, are you wearing paint?" "Yes, he is," Fuson interjects. "And we're going to Creedom." You shouldn't be doing that." "How long was the time frame the guard at the gate told you?" the guard asks. "A week," Ciora replies. Idiot. "Look, by the time you guys get there, the army will only be a couple days behind. I really can't suggest you go." "Look, we don't have another choice. We'll just be in and out." Fuson nervously grins as the captain shrugs and turns back to his battalion. The group all kind of nervously look at each other as they continue walking down the path. The field slowly turning into forest, and the landscape starts descending at quite a steep angle. The environment around them is covered in densely packed tall pine trees with dark green hue to surround the large road paved through it. An ever-present sound of a flowing river accompanies the landscape. As the forest becomes less dense and the tree line breaks, another set of wheat fields is revealed. Human farmers tending to the fields wave at the group as they walk through. The island finally ends in a sheer cliff face, the sea ahead of them littered with large stone monoliths all the way to the land in the distance. I didn't realize the land bridge was that destroyed," Ciora stutters. "Well, I'll meet you guys on the bottom," Fuson scoffs as he spreads his wings and jumps off, flying straight down. Aultemus and Ciora look at each other, then to Rilo, who's staring off in the distance and hits himself on the chest as he glows for a second, getting into a crisscross position as he begins floating down. He does turn to wait for them. "Can you make something to stand on?" Aultemus asks Ciora. She nods, saying that she can help, as Aultemus slides his hand in front of him. A block of stone jets out of the cliff, matching its color. Ciora begins hovering her hand above the ground, as if she is searching for something underneath the surface. She continues to do this until she finally starts walking towards the edge of the cliff. She tosses her hand forward as some tree roots emerge and continue the path that Aultemus started. Sior and Aultemus get into a rhythm of weaving rocks and vines into a staircase as they descend down. Rilo stays floating next to them as Fuson watches them from below on one of the monoliths. This takes up most of the day as the span between the beach on the mainland and the cliff up top they started on is at least a couple miles across and a couple hundreds of feet vertically. They use the large destroyed monoliths as checkpoints to take breaks and are able to walk a good distance on. And once they get low enough to the sea level, Fuson begins helping bridge the gaps with ice magic. Once they finally reach the mainland, the sun is beginning to set in an array of orange, purples, and pinks. The forest tree line is to their north, and once the sun sets low enough, they notice glimmers of light to their west. "Should we camp here or rest in that village?" Aultemus starts. "Camp here," Rilo stutters. Everyone turns to him as he tenses up. I just know the area." "Well, if Monkey Boy wills it, so it shall be," Fuson declares as he plops down onto the ground. "Hey, Rilo, can you show me how to use kinetic magic?" Aultemus asks. "Sure," Rilo mutters before being cut off. "Hey, Aul, make sure you make the basic shelter first before you do that," Fuson blurts out. Aultemus nods as he assumes a low stance, clenching his fists and arms as he begins pulling out blocks of stone from the ground, which eventually come together as a little hut with a hole in the top. "I'm gonna go get some wood," Fuson exclaims as he lifts off and jets away with a large blast of air pushing him forward and up. "Wait!" "You better not go too far in," Sior exhales. It's hard to tell how dumb he is. "Why? What happened?" Aultemus asks. "Because I don't know how active that forest is. Rumors say it's the most active non-elven forest, and active forests that historically have not had any Valkyries in them hate Valkyries." Aultemus pauses and gives her a puzzled look. "I'm not really sure what you mean. Jungles and forests are no-go zones on my planet, even caves sometimes." Sior crosses her arms and shrugs. "Weird. Maybe your planet just has more mana than ours does, or a bigger nexus or something? But some forests have species that can't control magic, so they're dormant, and you can freely harvest them without having any problems," Sior explains. "And I don't really know anything about caves. That's a human thing." "Human thing?" Aultemus inquires. "Yeah, elves and Valkyries don't go into caves, for obvious reasons. Humans tend to be more adventurous, and so they know more about the caves and the Orklands." "Orklands?" "Basically the other side of the planet. There's a big mountain range that basically cuts the planet in half. They're about your size, orange to brown skin, horns. No one really interacts with them because they're so far." Aultemus nods and says, "I see. There's only one other race on my planet, and we're always fighting them." "Why?" Sior asks. "I don't want to talk about it." Okay, that's no problem," Sior falters. "Hey, do you mind if I cast a spirit spell on you? It's insurance in case anyone gets hurt." Aultemus perks up, interested, and nods. "Yeah, sure, go ahead." Sior methodically inscribes a sigil on Aultemus's shoulder. It glows for a second before disappearing completely. A corresponding tattoo of a tree on her arm glows for a second as well, growing a branch. "Is this for me too?" Rilo hesitates. "Yeah, if that's okay," Sior responds. Rilo nervously shakes his head, looking at the floor. "I think I'll pass, if that's okay." Sior nods as Aultemus gets up and walks over to Rilo. Meanwhile, Fuson flew north toward the tree line, flying over a field, hearing the air rush by, shushed by his head feathers, making the sound bearable in case he ever needed to hear anything. The smell of the sea slowly evolves into a forest pine and oak. He lands, making a sweeping motion as if his wings were like brooms. The gentle waves of wind following his motions on the ground, picking up any loose sticks, brush, leaves, and other foliage. As Fuson walks along, the trees begin to emit a teal glow, sometimes green depending on the tree. He continues sweeping up the foliage for a few minutes, stopping to gaze into the endless void of forest before him. Light glimmers in the distance from the trees, and the sounds of the leaves rustle from the wind. Something suddenly catches Fuson's attention as he notices someone watching him with two red eyes. They seem extremely far, but Fuson makes a sloppy, swirling motion with his wings as he tries to gather the foliage quickly. Taking his eyes off the horizon, he looks back to see, with eyes now much closer than before. Fuson stutters as he collects his things in a ball of air before dropping everything. His hands begin to shake as he turns to fly us away out of the forest. Panting heavily, Fuson looks back to see the figure a few hundred paces away, turns to check on his ball of items once again, and then back to see a wooden man in a tree, long limbs that all end in claws with long, sharpened talons. Its whole body seems to be made out of wood, but from the crevices in the wood is a bright red color, like blood, but nothing oozing out of it. The face of the creature is a clean white, coming out of a wooden neck which turns into a helmet-like shape with antlers, all of it unsettling thanks to the glowing red eyes. Fuson turns to face it, holding the ball in his wings, but still inches back. The creature bares its teeth, all black with pronounced canines. The two of them just stare at each other for what seems like an eternity, the creature adjusting itself every so often in the tree, and Fuson continuing to move back. Finally, the creature jumps down onto the ground, and Fuson can see that it must be 7 feet tall at least, with a hunched back. It tilts its head, maintaining a menacing look on its face as it gets on all fours and creeps its way toward Fuson, matching his pace with every step. Fuson is still shaking, but tries to get his senses together to create water at his feet to envelop his legs. He continues his back pace, slowly creating the pool of water to follow him. The creature jumps forward, and immediately Fuson controls the pool to form an ice spike jetting toward it. At an inhuman reaction time, the closest tree emits a glow, and the ice shatters, no longer impeding the creature as he brings down a claw. The next split second, Fuson's eyes turn back into a cloudy white, and he erupts, shooting sage-green lightning in all directions. The man's eyes widen, but before his claw makes impact, he opens up his talons so his palm comes into contact with Fuson, knocking him to the floor. Fuson gets up quickly, making a whirlwind around him as his entire body twirls around, and he releases an explosion of air, still holding the orb of debris. He looks at the creature with his white, pearly eyes, now determined and annoyed as opposed to fearful and anxious. The creature maintains its gaze, confused as to what happened. Fuson, with a thought, places another bolt of lightning and hits the creature's leg. The creature, unfazed, maintains its gaze and relaxes into a more docile, fetal position, and slowly fades to smoke. Fuson blinks, and his teal eyes return, along with his frightened expression. His eyes dart around, he sees nothing, so he returns to picking up some more foliage before flying away. Back at the camp, Rilo is repeating a punching motion, pointing to the inside of his elbow, while Aultemus watches. Concentrate here, and then focus the energy as it travels up to your fist. This is the first kinetic spell they teach, and then Rilo finishes the motion at Aultemus' direction. There's about 5 feet between them, but Aultemus is pushed back. Oh, okay, I'll try that, Aultemus reacts. Fuson can be heard running up to the camp. All of his debris that he's been carrying falls around him as he collapses, out of breath. His non-feathered skin paled as the sand underneath them. Siora immediately runs right toward him. Oh my gods, what happened? I tripped, Fuson lies. On the air while you were flying? Yeah, if you had wings, you'd get it. Okay, but you don't look good. Did a tree hit you? Or... Wait, you encountered the Guardian, didn't you? Or the Forest Spirit, whatever Valkyries call it? Siora says, talking fast and anxiously. So that's what that was, Fuson mutters to himself. Holy shit, you did! And you're not dead. How did you get away from it? Siora replies. I don't know. It was there, and then I blinked, and it was gone. Fuson replies, slurring his words. One of Siora's hands begins to glow as she puts it on Fuson's head. Aultemus and Rilo finally notice and run over. What happened? Aultemus asks. Fuson ran into the Forest Guardian. This is a big forest, and humans don't take care of their forests, so it must be really angry and very powerful. Aultemus nods along. I think we have something like that on my planet, too, Aultemus replies. We're gonna have to deal with that. I might be able to calm it down, but it probably hasn't seen elves in so long, Siora states to the group. While the group mulls over what just happened, Rilo takes this time to grab all the foliage and sticks and puts them together for a fire. Siora also begins inscribing the same rune that she put on Aultemus onto Fuson. Fuson, I'm going to put this rune on you in case anything happens. It's harmless, and I've already put one on Aultemus. Fuson nods as he begins to lose consciousness. As Siora finishes, she looks at the final inscribed rune and notices it looks as though there's a shadow behind the top layer of the tattoo, as if she drew it twice, one on top of the other. She rubs it a couple times, but then leaves it alone, and the group begins to set up for the night. The next day, Rilo wakes up first and goes for a jog along the beach. The air is cool and the sea smells subtle and refreshing. He spots a school of fish, their vibrant crimson color piercing through the shallow teal sea water. He stands there, looking at the school, contemplating if he wants to go in and catch one. The school is massive, and each fish is roughly 5 feet long. Rilo grabs a rock and it glows for a second. He gently tosses the rock up as it begins to float. He hovers it above the school as he begins looking for a shot, aiming it with subtle hand movements. He notices the school becoming restless as the surface of the water begins to freeze. Realizing he has no time left, he shoots the rock into the surface of the water, narrowly avoiding the expanding ice sheet. Some of the fish try to shine light in Rilo's eye, while others undulate the water to try and get out of the way. However, inevitably in the chaos, one of them floats up to the top. Rilo goes in after it as the school swims away. The other 3 have already woken up by the time Rilo has returned to the camp. They reignite the fire from last night and begin to cook the fish. While they're all waking up, they each take turns going behind one of the conjured walls and rinsing themselves off with water magic. They then clean up the campsite before heading out, Aultemus sliding the conjured rocks back into the ground like a set of drawers. They head north, and once they get to the dense tree line, Siora asks them to stop. She walks up to one of the trees, which glows in a similar color as before, but more intensely as she gets closer. Siora holds out her palm, glowing the usual sage color, and places it against the tree. As soon as it makes contact, the roots sprout from under her and wrap around her body. She doesn't react, but the whole group flinches and runs up to her. "Don't do anything," Siora says through gritted teeth. The group witnesses as the tree and the glowing energy on Siora's hands flicker, as if a conversation is happening between them. Occasionally, Siora had a pulse of light erupt from her body, which fades into the forest at the end of the conversation. The roots slithering back into the ground as the tree's glow fades away. "So, what was that? Done reuniting with your vegetable boyfriend?" Fuson remarks. Siora rolls her eyes and holds in a smile before responding. "No, I was just letting the forest know of our presence. I assume most people take it for granted, and I'm pretty sure humans don't get as many spirit-born Aphanites as elves. Is that right?" "That sounds right," Rilo agreed. "Okay, that's it? What about the scary ghost that almost killed me?" Fuson grunts. "It's not a ghost, and I think we'll still have to deal with it," Siora sighs. The group looks at each other nervously before setting out, and continue to walk through the forest, noticing deer with huge antlers leaping in front of them. A few hours into the walk, the group sees a large black and orange feline creature with huge fangs in one of the trees, staring back at them. Siora casually waving her hand in the direction of the feline as a gush of sage-green air caresses the animal. The feline goes from a readied stance to sitting down on the branch that it was standing on. The group looks at Siora as she puts a finger to her lips, motioning them to be quiet. The feline sneezes as they walk away, a burst of fire coming from its mouth. Eventually, they run into a small clearing, with a stone at the center of it within the forest. The Guardian already facing the direction of the group. "What do we do now?" Fuson asks, a nervous rattle in his voice. Rilo also looks disturbed. "Can we fight it?" Aultemus asks. "Probably, but let me try to communicate with it first," Siora replies. Siora slams her fists together, creating an aura of armor around her body on top of the wooden armor she's already wearing. "Stay here. If it attacks me, jump in and help, but we can't kill it, so we're just looking for an opening to run away," Siora commands as she begins walking forward into the clearing, calmly and slowly. Aultemus and Fuson tense up and watch from behind a tree. Rilo sits down in the opening in a meditative stance. Siora kneels down when she is sufficiently in the clearing and places a palm on the ground, her other hand out as if asking for charity. The creature looks at her and toward the tree line where the rest of the group stands. It walks up to Siora on all fours, inquisitively, like a cat. The eyes go from red to white, almost blending into the rest of its face. Siora's eyes glow sage green. Every so often, a pulse of magic flows from them and travels along the ground, gently pulsing the grass away in its wake. After an interminable silence, the guardian convulses back as if it's trying to get something off of its head or neck. It violently shakes, eyes turning back to red, and lets out an odd scream. The sound itself travels across the forest in a wave from one ear to the next. The screams are a low, even tone that rarely deviate throughout the duration of the scream. Sierra snaps her outstretched hand back, but has barely moved still. The rest of the group, even more tense than before, and Fuson flying up above the tree line, overlooking the clearing. The creature finally jumps at Sierra, trying to grab her by the neck, but as she stands up, the strike lands on her torso. They tumble a few feet on the ground, and Sierra manages to get on top of it. Aultemus runs forward. Sierra, noticing, violently leaps off of the creature. Aultemus slams his right foot into the ground during his sprint, causing a tall wall of rock to form. He proceeds to tackle the wall, dislodging it from the ground and causing it to collapse onto the creature. He zaps away about 5 feet as the creature almost immediately breaks through the rock and surveys where everyone is. The creature sees Rilo in his meditative state and charges him, lunging with an outstretched claw, Aultemus and Sierra charging after it. Rilo, after patting his chest, swiftly weaves around the arm of the creature, deftly dodging using his kinetic magic to control his body. He twirls around the creature's arm, bringing down one of his legs and kicking down on its back, planting it into the ground. Fuson comes down from the sky, encasing himself in a swirl of water that spins into a fine point, slowly turning it into ice. Sierra notices and desperately calls a tree root out of the ground to intercept Fuson's ice spike, knocking him off course and sending him tumbling to the side. "I said don't kill it," Sierra yells. "I wasn't aiming for anything important," Fuson yells back. Sierra rolls her eyes as she turns back to look at the creature, which has thrown Rilo into a tree behind it. It turns around to meet Sierra's gaze and goes for a lunge, but a wall of rock pops up in front of her, taking most of the force out of the creature and letting Sierra backpedal. As the rocky debris settles, Sierra charges forward and goes for a punch. It nimbly dodges and moves to strike her again. However, she maneuvers to let her pauldrons take the strike, the magic overshield dissipating. Aultemus sees an opening and goes for a strike of his own, and lands a clean blow on its chest. The creature just stands there for a moment. Aultemus takes his opportunity to zap above the creature and materializes upside down, grabbing the creature's head with his hands, channeling lightning directly into the creature's flesh. But the creature seemingly ignores the lightning and grabs Aultemus, throwing him into a tree. "We need to leave," Fuson yells from the sky, flying toward the tree line. A tree branch suddenly swats him from the back, causing him to crash into the ground. The creature then charges him, but Sierra shoots a beam of energy at its leg, causing it to knock over. She tackles it while it's on the ground and grabs its face and tries to channel her magic into it. Aultemus regains his bearings and creates rocks around the limbs of the creature, closing his palms to make the rocks turn into one mass with the ground. Fuson gets up and funnels water from his wings and freezes it over the rocks. Once Sierra notices, she jumps off the creature and runs. "This is north, right?" she yells. Fuson flies up over the tree line and yells, "Yeah," back to her. He swoops down under the trees and follows her. Rilo and Aultemus follow suit as they retreat. Aultemus looks back and sees the creature snap through the rock and ice and disappear into smoke. "It broke right through," he calls to the group. "I told it what the humans were doing. Hopefully that'll distract it and cause it to ignore us," Sierra yells. The group keep running for a few minutes as another branch tries to swat Fuson down. "Stop! What is with the trees here?" "There aren't Valkyries in this forest, idiot," Sierra replies. Fuson lands as the group slows down, another tree making a swat at him. "Hey, Birdbrain, have you noticed any other birds here?" Sierra states. Fuson goes from angry to shocked as his eyes widen and his senses all jolt to life. He looks around and listens, while trying to remember every moment since they landed on the mainland. "What the?" he whispers softly to himself. "Is that really so weird?" Aultemus asks. "All the human fighting has destroyed the landscape, making the fauna really dangerous. Harvesting this forest is super difficult now. At least elven trees like Valkyries," Fuson scoffs to himself. "Marcon is from around here?" Aultemus asks. "Hey, yeah, Monkey Boy, you never told us how you know him. That would be a pretty good time to tell us before we jump into his fucking living room. So how about it?" Fuson blurts out. Rilo's surprised and caught off guard, having managed to keep to himself this whole time. "We might need to know," Sierra softly says. "We won't get mad," Aultemus reassures him. Rilo, still nervous, looks at the group but avoids their eyes, staring at their chests or their boots. A long time ago, a large temple sits atop a snowy mountain with large braziers lighting the deep red terracotta shingles that line the roofs making up the complex. The snow is exceptionally shiny, with thin black trees that shoot through the icy blanket and have a hard, matching black leaves that make up the perimeter around the temple and the road leading up to it. In one of the open-air plazas, 2 teenagers are surrounded by a dozen or other similarly aged children and a handful of adults. Everyone is wearing matching black, form-fitting attire, with the adults wearing robes over their combat garb. 2 teenagers, one looks a bit older than the other, paler, are sparring. However, throughout the duel, the young one is beating him slowly, with more precise movements, eventually landing a decisive blow and knocking him down onto the ground. The other children rush over to the younger one, jumping and yelling excitedly as one of the adults walks over to the older one and helps him up. However, the child pulls away as he goes to grab him. "Go help him up," one of the adults asks softly, as Rilo stomps over to the other child. Rilo then aggressively grabs the other boy's arm, lifts him up with kinetic magic, and throws him up onto his feet. One of the adults immediately throws one of the hard black leaves from the trees at Rilo, intentionally grazing his cheek, causing Rilo's magic to wear off of Mark. The leaf that continues forward, piercing into one of the walls where it stays. "You lost, Mark," Rilo says. "Shut up," Markon grunts, his face beet red. "Rilo, enough," one of the adults commands, grabbing his arm and holding him in place with kinetic magic. Training's over. The kids all rush away, Mark slowly trailing behind them. The adults congregate together as the one holding Rilo takes him elsewhere. This has been happening for a couple months now. Rilo's let his position on the top of the class go to his head. He's 12, the youngest, and we can't let him think that this is good behavior. Mark has been getting bullied by the others because of this, and he's not listening. We have nowhere to send him. We lost track of his family. We have to separate him then. For how long? I don't know. Until he gets better. Keep him in the upper chambers. Later, Rilo is inside one of the temples, sparring with someone much older than him. The opponent is emotionless and properly countering Rilo's attacks as he progressively gets more frustrated. A soft bell rings, but Rilo disregards it. The opponent counters him and slams him onto the floor, knocking all the air out of him before he walks away and out of the room. One of the adults comes over and kneels on the floor next to Rilo. "I'm tired of all this. Let me go back to my friends," Rilo yells, hitting the ground. "No, you obviously haven't learned." "Yes, I have! It's been a year! Please!" he yells again, tears welling in his eyes. "No, you haven't. Till you're calm and level-headed, you will not see the elder children again. Plus, we can train you better in here. Is that not good?" The adult stands up, turning before he leaves the room. Food is ready. Rilo crawls over to the window and looks out to see the kids dueling in the plaza. Faint yelling and laughing can be heard from the high tower, but the strong winds muffle most of the noise. "I don't care. No one here talks to me," Rilo mumbles to himself. He slumps under the window and lays on the floor. A few years go by, and Rilo is scrubbing the floor of one of the halls in the temple. As he gets up, drenched in sweat, Markon turns the corner and pauses for a moment. Rilo doesn't react. He keeps going, focusing his eyes on the floor. As they approach each other, Rilo looks up for a moment, and the two exchange a glance, but keep going. Markon stops a few steps after they cross without turning and says, "Today's my last day, and you helped me a lot, so no hard feelings," Markon utters. Rilo stops for a second, but is too nervous to react, so he continues creeping forward. Markon is immediately angered and turns to face Rilo, but stops himself from stepping forward. "Fuck you!" Markon yells, punching the wall and cracking the wood beneath his fist. "You can rot here for all I care." Markon marches back the way he was going, leaving the hallway they were in. Rilo stops before leaving the hall and slumps back down on the floor, covering his face with his robe. "That's it? That's nothing," Fuson blurts out. "Fuson, be quiet," Sior nudges. "Hey, I'm just saying, I met a lot of people, and some of them just say any shit they feel like," Fuson says, putting his wings up in defeat. "Sorry, Rilo stammers. No, it's okay. I'm sure you were just misinterpreting how Mark felt, or how he would feel now if you guys met face to face. People forgive things quite easily, especially if it happened a long time ago," Sior explains. It's easy to dehumanize people you don't see or interact with, Fuson points out. Rilo locks up at this comment and Ciara punches Fuson on the shoulder.